Charles, are you done moving yet? My father-in-law grumbles, not bothering to look at me but clearly directing his question at me. He always talks like he's the only one that matters. I've put up with it until now, but I can't anymore. I stop wiping the table and give Charles a hard stare, even though he's not looking at me. I'll be out today, I reply. Charles smirks, satisfied. You've just been a leech in garbage. I'll feel so much better when you're gone. He probably thinks, oblivious to how much his lifestyle has changed. My name's Grace. I turned 40 this year. I'm married to William and currently staying with my in-laws. It's been a few years since we got married, but we don't have kids. We don't plan on having any, and we can anyway. I found out shortly after we got married. I met William at a party, and honestly, if I'd known about his infertility from the beginning, I might not have married him. He told me on our wedding day. It felt like my world crashed down on me. We had dreams of a bright future together, imagining ourselves with perhaps 2 kids and discussing potential names for them. William even joined in on picking out names for our future children. But it was all a deception, or maybe not entirely a deception. Maybe William did desire children and thought about names, despite knowing he couldn't have them. Wasn't that the ultimate betrayal? I married him with the belief that we would create a happy family together, only to be completely deceived by William, whom I trusted implicitly. While some might have immediately filed for divorce upon discovering such a truth, divorce isn't a straightforward option for me. I had already committed to building a family with my in-laws, who are the only ones we can truly call parents. I couldn't just announce to them the day after becoming a family that we were getting divorced. Living with the in-laws meant facing the inevitable question of when we would start a family. So we decided to break the news to them right away. Naturally, we didn't blame William. Instead, we attributed our childlessness to a medical issue on my end. When they found out we couldn't have children, my in-laws were livid. A worthless woman who can't bear children should leave this house immediately, declared my father-in-law Charles, who then began treating me like a servant. From the moment I arrived, I was never treated with respect, always made to feel inferior. I ate alone in the kitchen, cleaning up after the in-laws and William finished their meals. Despite my efforts in the kitchen, I only received scraps. My weight plummeted, and within 6 months of marriage, my wrists were protruding. Previously, it was my mother-in-law Madison who bore the brunt of Charles' anger. But once I joined the family, his focus shifted to me. William noticed Madison's newfound relief. "Mom seems happier lately," he remarked, attributing it to her no longer being the target. Although she never smiled around Charles, I noticed her smiling more when talking to William. Charles's tyranny extended beyond verbal abuse. Once he learned we couldn't have children, he ordered me to work tirelessly from dawn to dusk. "Since you're not fulfilling your role as a woman, at least be useful around the house," he demanded. I had always intended to work after marriage and was eager to leave the house as soon as possible. Balancing chores, work, and arriving home before everyone else was challenging, but having a job with flexible hours helped. However, even when I returned early and completed chores, I never ate with the family or received praise for my cooking. Charles, in particular, often discarded my food without tasting it, deeming it unworthy. Neither William nor Madison ever objected or offered any support. Despite my protests from the kitchen, meal times were usually silent affairs. I couldn't help but wonder if they truly enjoyed eating in such silence. But I can only observe them silently. I had no other option but to get along with my in-laws. I pretended to be friendly and played the role of a devoted wife. I couldn't pinpoint the purpose of it all, but as someone without parents, divorce seemed like an unbearable burden. Then Charles demanded that I hand over all my earnings for the household expenses. I had intended to contribute a portion of my salary, but Charles insisted on all of it, which seemed like an unreasonable demand. What's the point of working if I have no control over my own money? But speaking up was not allowed. Charles's decisions were final, and challenging him wouldn't change anything. It was easier to comply, keeping Charles in a good mood and avoiding the sorrowful looks from Madison and William. Ultimately, the The main source of trouble in this marriage was Charles. Madison and William were not as much of a problem. It was Charles who oppressed and tormented me. It appeared that Madison used to handle the household finances, but it became my responsibility after marriage. Charles, isn't this too much for Grace? Madison dared to question. Shut up, Charles dismissed me in his eyes. Madison and I were treated similarly. As women, our opinions were deemed worthless and not welcomed. I took over the household budget from Madison. When I first saw it, I was shocked, but after several years, I grew accustomed to it. Perhaps because there was another source of income. Charles started spending more extravagantly than before. It's for work, he claimed, increasing his nights out. And the three of them, excluding me, began taking trips during long weekends. They never used to act like this, but suddenly everything changed. He still doesn't see me as part of the family, often referring to me as a burden or worthless. To him, I'm just a maid who doesn't cost anything. In my 20s and 30s, I could brush it off, sometimes even finding peace when Charles wasn't around. But as I neared 40, I couldn't stand his mistreatment any longer. It felt foolish and exhausting to listen to him and obey silently. I grew tired of being afraid of Charles and started standing up for myself. He didn't take kindly to that and gradually grew to resent me. This negative cycle continued to worsen, and recently, my relationship with Charles had deteriorated to the point where we hardly spoke. When he did speak, it was only to insult me. I would fire back, making the atmosphere at home unbearable. It had gotten so bad that he would demand I leave the house. But I refused to go quietly. Where do you expect me to go, knowing I have no family? I would retort every time. Charles would angrily slam his glass on the table, breaking so many that I lost count. Why should I have to deal with this? A woman like you shouldn't talk back. Madison and William would quickly exit the room, sensing another argument brewing. Once it reached this point, it became Charles' one-man show. You should be grateful to even be allowed in this house. Don't get too cocky, you leech, he would rant, his face turning red with anger. We've had this conversation 100 times, I sighed, tired of being yelled at. Normally, I would cave in and apologize. I'm sorry was my usual response, but that day was different. You need to watch what you say, Charles. You're not getting any younger. It's time to calm down. I snapped back sharply, feeling just as irritable. Charles, caught off guard by my defiance, was furious. Who do you think you're talking to? I am the head of this household. A wife like you shouldn't have opinions, he barked. I knew I had crossed a line, but I couldn't stop myself. I've been your wife for years. Isn't it time I'm treated like a human being? You're retired now, with less income. It seems the tables are turning. I continued, unable to contain my pent-up frustration. I confronted Charles directly, and he responded by grabbing me by the collar. I don't need someone like you in my house. I don't want to see your face anymore. Pack your things and leave immediately. He yelled so loudly that the furniture shook. Though I should have apologized right then, I couldn't hold back any longer. Fine, you want me to leave? That's what will make you happy, isn't it, Charles? I challenged him, meeting his gaze defiantly. Yes, he spat out. Unable to remain silent any longer, I declared, then I'll do it. He stormed off to his room with a loud noise, and I, feeling somewhat calmer, began cleaning the living room, which Charles had left in disarray. Madison came to check on me with a worried expression, but left without saying anything, returning to her own room. I realized I had no place in this house anymore. Neither William nor Madison would stand up for me. Years of enduring mistreatment had finally erupted, leaving me feeling more isolated than ever. The next morning, I followed my usual routine, waking up early to start my day. Charles emerged from his room and entered the living room, settling onto the sofa with a newspaper, paying me no mind. Without even glancing up, he casually asked, "Have you finished moving yet?" It was impossible for me to have relocated so swiftly after the events of yesterday. I assumed it was merely a drunken outburst, not a serious demand. Surely he was referring to leaving the house, right? When do you plan on departing? You no longer have the right to reside here. Charles continued, still not meeting my gaze. Halting my task, I turned to face him directly. If he truly intends for me to leave, then I must respond seriously. I'll be gone by today, I declared firmly. Nearby, Madison, frozen with concern, cast a worried glance in my direction. It was evident that once I departed, Charles would refocus his animosity towards her, and she didn't want me to leave. However, Charles had made up his mind. Apologizing and staying was never an option. With a satisfied laugh from Charles echoing behind me, I hurriedly gathered my belongings and left the in-laws' home. Uncertain of my destination, I felt a sense of liberation. I sent a message to William, who was already away. Please proceed with the divorce proceedings. A lawyer would reach out to him. With that, I powered off my phone. In the following days, I engaged a lawyer who reached out to William and the in-laws. Charles, convinced that divorce was inevitable, pressured William to swiftly sign the papers. William hesitated, glancing back and forth between me and the divorce documents. But there was no room for second thoughts. With Charles's insistence and my determination to move forward, he reluctantly complied. I have no money to spare for a woman like you, but dealing with lawyers is a nuisance, so I'll foot the bill, Charles grumbled, his arrogance palpable. The lawyer offered a wry smile at his demeanor. Despite his reluctance, William signed the agreement under Charles's stern gaze. In the presence of the lawyer, I added my signature, and the divorce was finalized. We settled the distribution of assets, and I received compensation for the harassment I had documented. It proved wise to invest in legal support rather than navigate the process alone. Concerned about his reputation, Charles opted to avoid complications by involving lawyers. As the manager of household finances, I was privy to Charles's financial situation, allowing me to propose a settlement within his means. With the property division and harassment compensation settled, I embarked on a comfortable life in my own apartment. While solitude was once daunting, my time living with the in-laws and going through a divorce taught me to appreciate the tranquility of my own space. I relished preparing meals for myself, reveling in the peace of not having anyone to answer to. One day, roughly 3 months post-divorce, Charles's incessant calls flood my phone. Assuming it's nothing positive, I ignore them, but his persistence forces me to accidentally answer. What have you done to my house? His voice reverberates loudly, even without the speaker mode. Instinctively, I pull the phone away from my ear. I haven't done anything. I simply left the house, as you've instructed. I reply defensively. Unsatisfied with my response, Charles continues to berate me. How can you claim you've done nothing? I'm receiving notifications about withdrawal issues since you left. Ah, so he's upset about the withdrawal problems and blames me. I don't know. I didn't take any action. I managed everything according to your directives and paid all dues. I respond, a sense of satisfaction creeping in as I understand why Charles is upset. I suppress a grin, relieved he can't see my reaction. That's absurd. Before you arrived, we managed fine with mine, Madison's, and William's incomes. How much were you earning anyway? I recall that I never disclosed my salary details to Charles. $45,000 take home. I reveal. Charles emits a noise akin to a squashed frog before falling silent. In reality, my job in sales at an investment trust firm primarily consisted of commission-based earnings, contingent on the returns I generated for investors. However, much of it vanished due to Charles' extravagant spending. Nonetheless, I had wisely invested my inheritance, generating some additional income. It wasn't a substantial amount, but it helped cover living expenses. I relied on this income to purchase necessities, although during the property distribution, only William's savings were considered. This was because only assets acquired during our marriage were subject to distribution, excluding the inheritance from my parents and its earnings. Since I utilized all earnings for household expenses throughout the marriage, I had no savings accumulated over the years. The Charles family spent money lavishly, unaware that I was compensating for it. You claim you managed before marriage, but was it on par with our current standard of living? I questioned. Charles's frustration finally boiled over. Don't jest. You should continue contributing to our household expenses. You're the one who caused this mess. So you must take responsibility, he retorted angrily. I couldn't help but chuckle at his absurd statement. I could envision Charles's face reddening as he raised his voice. What's the matter? What are you implying? You were the one who insisted I leave, remember? I simply followed your directive. Why should I, no longer a part of the family, continue providing financial support? I replied, half amused, before hearing a loud crash from the other end. Charles must have thrown another fit. The realization that I no longer had to clean up after him almost made me wish for more destruction. Moreover, we're strangers now, not family, not anything. Please refrain from assuming familial obligations. Manage your own finances. I left you with enough to sustain yourself, didn't I? With that, I bid him farewell and disconnected the call. I anticipated more calls from Charles, but none came. I thought perhaps he was feeling remorseful, but it seemed that wasn't the case. Instead, it appeared he was too ashamed to admit he couldn't meet the payments. He resorted to pressuring William and Madison to borrow money from financial institutions to cover their expenses. While payments were made, it only led to accumulating debt. Refusing to adjust their lifestyle, they continued living beyond their means. Continuing like this will only lead to more debt. You need to make changes, I warned, but they persisted, unable to meet their financial obligations and sinking further into debt each month. William reached out to me, foolishly considering reconciliation and even suggesting severing ties with his father to reunite. How could he propose such a thing now, after failing to defend me against Charles's mistreatment? Despite my decision to stand by William, knowing we couldn't have children, he never protected me. His suffocation under Charles' influence is no longer my concern. I wish they would grasp the consequences of their actions and endure the repercussions. Now, the in-laws find themselves burdened by debt yet unwilling to adjust their lifestyle. Charles, now working as a contract laborer with reduced pay, and William and Madison have taken up part-time security positions. It's not just Charles. Madison and William are also guilty of refusing to downsize their living standards. Despite being stretched to their limit, they refuse to make sacrifices. I used to be consumed with protecting William, but now I prioritize my own well-being. At 40, the prospect of having children may be challenging, but I remain open to the possibility. Before the divorce, mornings felt like a burden, but now I wake up feeling rejuvenated. I eagerly anticipate a brighter future in my newfound independence.
"Why aren't you eating dinner?" my father-in-law asked, seeing us for the first time in a long time for New Year's. He must have noticed that there was only enough food at the dining room table for 3. It happens all the time. What? My father-in-law looked curiously across the table at my mother-in-law and husband. What exactly do you mean by it happens all the time? A daughter-in-law who can't give her mother-in-law grandchildren would have to be a slave, wouldn't she? My mother-in-law responded casually while chewing on the hamburger steak I had made. That's right. Ruby is our slave. She stays in the kitchen to take care of us while we eat, my husband chimed in, echoing his mother's sentiment. As expected, he continued, he took me to his mother's every weekend to help her with housework, even though you couldn't give her grandchildren. I'm letting you stay here. You should appreciate her and do the best you can for my mom. I didn't want to go to my in-laws' house, but I had made a commitment. Even if I refused to go, my husband would verbally force me. He knows I have a short temper and difficulty finding my words. Mom, I brought a slave. He even greeted me that way recently. What are you talking about? My father-in-law seemed offended by the way my mother-in-law and husband referred to me as a slave. That's not how a normal family with children behaves. Ruby, it's not your fault. You should stop bullying her. What do you mean? You're the one that lives so far away, so stay out of the problem, my husband snapped back. That's right, Dad. Don't tell me what to do. You didn't have to watch Mom lose the possibility of having grandchildren, my mother-in-law added, with a tone that sounded like they were mocking my father-in-law. I tossed the coffee beans in the grinder while listening to their conversation. My mother-in-law and husband always ordered me to bring them coffee as soon as they finished eating. I was so busy with shopping for my mother-in-law that I only had time to eat a piece of sweet bread earlier. Come on, I'm hungry too. I'm not sure what I'm doing, I muttered to myself as if escaping from the grinder's blade. A single coffee bean fell to the floor. My name is Ruby, and I'm a 37-year-old housewife. During the weekday lunch hours, I work part-time in the kitchen of a family restaurant. My husband and I rent an apartment. I used to work at the same local bank as my husband, but I left 3 years ago to focus on fertility treatment. We were unable to have children, so we sought medical attention and were told that the problem was on my side. After a year of treatment, I was told that it is impossible for me to get pregnant. My mother-in-law and husband changed shortly after that. Originally, we were both working and managing our own income and budgets. When I decided to leave my job, my husband took on the responsibility of covering our living expenses. He managed our savings, paid the bills for rent and insurance, and started giving me a monthly allowance. At first, we were able to live comfortably on $1,000 a month. However, when we stopped pursuing fertility treatments, my husband suggested we could save money. Since we don't have fertility treatments anymore, you can save money, were his first words after we made the decision to stop trying to conceive. Because of the financial burden of the treatment, I've been giving you more money for living expenses, but you don't need it anymore. You can go back to work if you want, he'd added. True to his word, he gradually reduced the amount he gave me, first $800, then $600, and eventually $500 a month. There was a time when I desperately tried to find work, but even then, my mother-in-law interfered. Working as a full-time employee is not good for a wife, she asserted. If you don't share the housework, she will divorce you. So, you're saying I shouldn't work? I questioned. Of course, if it's only part-time, then fine. You need to devote yourself to Carl and serve me. You can't even have grandchildren, so it's the least you can do, she replied. Despite enduring painful treatments, I couldn't conceive. My mother-in-law's attitude towards me changed drastically. She'd call me frequently, asking me to run errands, and I worked every weekend at their house. No matter what I did, she found fault and complained incessantly. Why are you folding laundry like that? Why not put the corners together and fold it correctly and neatly? Do it again, she'd scold, even throwing the laundry onto the floor once. It seemed like she relished in hurting me. One evening after dinner, my father-in-law noticed my distress and offered to take me out for a drink. I'm going out for a drink. Do you want to join me? He asked, showing concern for my well-being. His kindness touched me deeply, and I couldn't help but cry. I saw that, and if you want, you can vent to me, he reassured. He took me to a local bar where we sat across from each other, sharing a beer and a whiskey soda. As we ordered mixed nuts and a salad, his compassionate presence was a welcome relief from the turmoil at home. I could tell Elizabeth and Carl were being rude to you, my father-in-law began, taking a sip of beer. He listened attentively as I poured out my grievances about how his wife and son had treated me since I stopped fertility treatments. I'm blamed for not being able to have children and am forced to run errands, I confided. My husband wouldn't let me work full-time, and he's reduced my living expenses since we stopped the treatments. Now, he only gives me $500 a month. What I hate most is being called a slave, I continued. Elizabeth is not happy unless she gets her way. She wasn't like this before, but she became selfish after having Carl. She would yell at me so much that I began to dislike her, and now we pretend to be a happy couple. Do you think it's because he doesn't want to be with me? I'm jealous my father-in-law has a place to escape to, I admitted. You're not tough enough to make yourself heard, he observed. Yeah, but venting to you makes me feel better, I admitted gratefully. Good, that makes me happy, he said before we had one more beer and one more whiskey soda before leaving the restaurant. However, as soon as we arrived back home, the situation escalated. I'm back, I announced as I opened the door, only to find my mother-in-law and husband standing there. Dad, did you have a night out with my wife? My husband questioned, eyeing both of us. What? I just invited Ruby for a drink, my father-in-law clarified. What kind of relationship is this that you can go out for drinks together? My mother-in-law interjected angrily. Just like your husband said, I retorted, feeling the tension mounting. What are you thinking, Ruby? Isn't it wrong for a wife to go to a bar with a man? You can't give me grandchildren, But you still have desires, my husband accused, joining in the finger pointing. Enough. A powerful voice echoed as if thunder had struck. My father-in-law was enraged, staring down Carl and Elizabeth. What is it with you? All I wanted was for Ruby to relax, he thundered, his anger palpable. The rage sped up my heart rate. I thought, noting the intensity of the moment, mild men or people can become more difficult to deal with when injured. I mused, watching Elizabeth shudder at her name being called. Was she scared of him, or did she have something to hide? You said what kind of relationship do you have with your father-in-law that you go out drinking together? My husband challenged. That's my daughter-in-law is treated like a slave, and I took her to get her mind off it. That's what happened because of Ruby, my father-in-law clarified, cutting through the tension with his explanation. I can't have grandchildren, my mother-in-law's accusation hung in the air, a barb aimed directly at me. The words ignited a desire to yell, to defend myself against her constant blame for not providing her with grandkids. How can you say that when you hate children? I wanted to retort, but I bit my tongue. Yet even in my silence, I couldn't shake the urge to challenge her unfair judgment. Well, grandchildren are different than other children, aren't they? I finally spoke up, my voice edged with frustration. That said, I don't think you wanted grandchildren enough to treat Ruby like this. You're just making an excuse to point the finger at her. My mother-in-law seemed about to respond, but then she abruptly averted her gaze. Was she tongue-tied or perhaps fearful of her husband's reaction? Carl, wait, my attention shifted to my husband. I heard you only give Ruby $500 a month for living expenses. Do you keep the rest of your salary? I probed, unable to ignore the discrepancy. No, I pay rent and insurance, he countered, but his evasive response left room for doubt. As the silence stretched, he seemed unable to conjure a convincing explanation. I came here to discuss our future. Let's get right to it, my father-in-law intervened, leading us to the living room. What do you mean discuss our future? Just sit down, my mother-in-law commanded, her tone imperious. Make some coffee first, Ruby, she ordered, her words laced with condescension, but my father-in-law's sharp rebuke cut through the air. Don't tell her what to do. I complied silently, sensing the tension crackling around me. As the coffee brewed, my father-in-law resumed speaking, his tone authoritative. I'll be retired in a few years after my current assignment ends. I won't be living with you anymore. The revelation left my husband and mother-in-law stunned. What do you mean? They both protested in unison. We've been masquerading as a couple for years, so we no longer need to live together, my father-in-law explained calmly. I'll live where I want, and you can stay here. But my mother-in-law's panic was palpable. That's fine, but I changed my mind after you accused me of being unfaithful earlier, she protested, rising from her seat. I'm selling the house, Elizabeth. I'll leave you nowhere to live. Her announcement sent shockwaves through the room. Why don't you just get a place to live? My father-in-law suggested, but her response was desperate. How am I going to do that? I can pay the rent. Get Carl to help you, my father-in-law suggested, unaware of the financial strain. He only gives her $500 a month. I'm sure he can pay for you. But my husband's nervousness betrayed him as he struggled to respond. That's not possible, he stammered, his discomfort evident. We don't have any money. If I do that, I won't be able to pay Mom's debt. The revelation hung in the air, casting a shadow over the room. You just mentioned debt, didn't you? My father-in-law's tone turned grave. Explain. I didn't mean what I said. I said explain. My father-in-law's voice thundered through the room, his anger palpable. My mother-in-law dissolved into tears at the sound of his fury, but his rage remained unabated. Mom owes me $50,000. I'm her co-signer, my husband confessed, his expression resigned. Around the time we stopped fertility treatment, Mom made an investment. She made some money at first, but then the stock market crashed, he admitted, his voice tinged with regret. You mean you lost money in the stock market and went into debt? I interjected, incredulous at the revelation. I used family funds. At the time, we were betting on stocks that were supposed to go up, but eventually we ended up in debt. Now, I'm paying it with my salary and Mom's repaying it by working part-time at a supermarket, my husband explained, his tone heavy with the weight of their financial burden. The news caught me off guard. I had never heard anything about stocks or debt. My mother-in-law had lost a significant amount of money in the stock market and had borrowed to compensate for it when I stopped fertility treatment. She must have tried to repay the debt by investing in stocks that were expected to rise. But as they struggled with repayment, those stocks failed to yield returns. Maybe. I couldn't help but voice my thoughts. That's also when you and Carl began treating me like a slave. Ruby, what are you trying to say? Were you just taking it out on me? My mother-in-law challenged, her voice strained. The slave treatment started around the time I stopped fertility treatments. I doubt it's because she wanted a grandchild so badly. But the simple answer is that she was taking it out on me because that was satisfying. I countered, the bitterness evident in my tone. As expected, my mother-in-law remained silent, her guilt hanging heavy in the air. And Carl used the money that he took out of my monthly expenses to pay off his debts. He could save money because there's no fertility treatment. He didn't give me less money for some strange, unknown reason. He just needed the money to repay his mom's debt. I concluded, the pieces of the puzzle falling into place. You stupid idiot. Finally, my father-in-law erupted, his frustration boiling over. Even if it's family money, it's money I worked for and saved for you, only for you to invest it in stocks without consulting me. To top it all off, you lost it all. What the hell kind of money are you spending? My father-in-law exploded, his frustration boiling over. With those words, he abruptly left the room, as if struck by a sudden realization. We all followed him, wondering what he was up to. What are you doing? My husband questioned as we trailed behind him. Show me Elizabeth's stuff. I'll check what she's buying, my father-in-law demanded, his tone sharp. Stop, Elizabeth cried, her voice tinged with panic, but her husband paid her no heed. He swung open the closet door, revealing a trove of luxury handbags. Rudy, are these bags expensive? They're all luxury items costing over $1,000, my father-in-law remarked, his tone incredulous. As he opened a small drawer in the corner of the closet, an array of accessories greeted our eyes: rings, necklaces, and earrings, some adorned with diamonds, rubies, and other precious stones. Picking up a ring, I noticed the engraving indicating it was made of 18-karat gold. Elizabeth, you bought all these expensive things without telling me? My father-in-law's disappointment was palpable. I'm sorry, but Elizabeth began, but her husband cut her off with a look of disgust. All this spending, investing in stocks without my permission, and treating Ruby like a slave. Divorce. I want a divorce, and I won't take no for an answer, he declared, his voice resolute. But how am I supposed to live? Elizabeth protested, her voice trembling. Talk to Carl. I'll sell this house and land immediately. You can sell these bags and jewelry to pay for the move, my father-in-law retorted, leaving Elizabeth speechless. My husband, no longer wearing his arrogant demeanor, nodded silently, his gaze averted. The next day, my father-in-law presented 2 sets of divorce papers. Here, Ruby. If you want to file for divorce too, he offered, handing one to me. I glanced at my husband, who sighed and turned away. Of course, I wanted a divorce, but more importantly, we wanted alimony from these people. That night, as I lay awake, I pondered the events of the past years. How long had I suffered in silence? What did I want now? I had once yearned for a child, enduring agonizing fertility treatments, only to realize I couldn't conceive. I continued my story, holding back the tears welling in my eyes. All the painful tests and treatments I endured in hopes of becoming a mother seemed futile now. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't have a baby. As I grieved, Carl informed me that since I no longer needed fertility treatment, he would reduce my living expenses. What are you saying? This is all Carl's fault, Elizabeth interjected, her voice sharp. My father-in-law's horror was palpable, and my mother-in-law fell silent, her accusations hanging in the air. She had blamed me for not giving her a grandchild and then treated me like a slave. Do you know how hard it was for me? I demanded, my frustration boiling over. Naturally, there was no response from Elizabeth or Carl. In the end, Carl's actions were driven by his need to pay off debts, while Elizabeth sought an outlet for the stress of financial losses in the stock market. I want you to reimburse me for this, I declared, my voice firm. What if I say I won't pay? Carl retorted defiantly. Sure, I'll talk to my lawyer, I shot back, my resolve unwavering. After the new year, my father-in-law officially divorced my mother-in-law. Within days of putting his house on the market, he found a buyer who intended to tear down the old house and clear the land to build a new one. Left with nowhere to stay, my mother-in-law moved into a rundown apartment, barely holding together. She now resides with my ex-husband, struggling to make ends meet while paying off their debts and alimony to me, a financial burden I'm sure weighs heavily on them. Meanwhile, I found solace in a beautiful little apartment and secured a clerical job at a security company thanks to my father-in-law's support. He encouraged me to utilize my accounting knowledge and skills from working at a bank. "I want you to be happy. If you ever need help, just tell me anything," he reassured me, his unwavering support a beacon of hope. With my father-in-law by my side, I embarked on this new chapter, determined to shine on my own. As I dressed for my first day of work, I made a promise to myself to embrace this fresh start and forge my path to happiness.
Your presence won't be required this Thanksgiving, just immediate family this year. My father's text arrived while I was standing in the great room of my mountain ranch, watching my staff prepare for 40 guests he didn't know I'd already invited. The man who raised me to believe I was worthless had no idea his excluded daughter owned the largest private estate in Colorado, or that his immediate family was about to become the only ones not celebrating there. Hi everyone, my name is Sage. I'm 35 years old, and I discovered that sometimes the best family gatherings are the ones you're not invited to. I stared at his message, reading it 3 times to make sure I understood correctly. After 35 years of being included, barely, grudgingly, always seated at the far end of the table, I was finally officially uninvited. The reason was crystal clear. My sister Meredith's new husband came from old money, and suddenly I didn't fit the image anymore. "Everything all right, Miss Sage?" I looked up to find my property manager, James, holding the wine delivery manifest. Behind him, the cathedral windows of my 12,000 square foot lodge framed the Rockies in their early winter glory. "Just my father uninviting me from Thanksgiving," I said, pocketing my phone. "Apparently, I'm not immediate family anymore." James, who'd worked for me for 5 years and knew my history, frowned. "But the aunts, uncles, cousins, they are all confirmed for Thursday. They don't know I've been excluded. Dad's hosting a separate dinner for just him, Mom, Meredith, and the Worthington clan. The investment banking Worthingtons. The very same. Apparently, my presence would dilute the sophistication. What my father didn't know, what none of them knew, was that while they'd been dismissing me as the unfortunate daughter who worked in tech support, I'd been building an empire. The dating app I'd created in my garage at 25 had sold for $200 million 3 years ago. The ranch, all 500 acres of it, was just one of my investments. I'd kept it quiet, partly out of habit from a lifetime of being overlooked, mostly because I wanted to see who loved me without the money. The answer, apparently, was not my immediate family. "Should I cancel the preparations?" James asked. "Absolutely not. In fact, let's add more. I want this to be the most spectacular Thanksgiving anyone's ever seen. And James, make sure the photographers capture everything." He smiled, understanding perfectly. "I'll inform the staff. Black tie optional. Black tie encouraged. If my family wants sophisticated, let's show them sophisticated." I spent the next 2 days overseeing preparations that would have made Martha Stewart weep. The lodge transformed into something from a magazine spread. Crystal chandeliers throwing rainbows across hand-carved wooden beams, tables set with antique china and wildflower arrangements, fires crackling in all 7 fireplaces. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from extended family. "Can't wait for Thursday. Should we bring anything? Kids are so excited to see you." Not one of them knew I'd been uninvited from the real family dinner. Dad had always been good at compartmentalizing his shame. Wednesday night, I called my cousin Baith, the family gossip. "Hey, I'm finalizing place cards. Who's sitting where at Dad's?" "What do you mean?" She sounded confused. "We're all coming to your ranch. Dad said you volunteered to host this year since you have that rental place in the mountains." "Rental place?" Of course that's how he'd spun it. "Right, just making sure. See you tomorrow." So he told them I was hosting at some insignificant rental, probably imagining a cramped cabin where the lesser relatives could gather while he dined with the Worthingtons. Perfect. Thanksgiving morning dawned crisp and brilliant. Snow dusted the peaks like powdered sugar, and the ranch looked like a winter paradise. By noon, the kitchen was in full swing. 3 professional chefs preparing a feast that included traditional favorites and gourmet surprises. The first guests arrived at 2. Uncle Pete and Aunt Sharon, who'd driven from Kansas, stood frozen in the driveway. "Sage," Pete whispered, "what is this place?" "Welcome to Mountain Star Ranch," I said, hugging them both. "Let James take your coats. The mulled wine is in the great room." "But your father said," Sharon started. "I know what he said. Come inside." They entered in a daze, taking in the soaring ceilings, the museum-quality art, the windows overlooking private ski runs. One by one, family members arrived, each with the same stunned expression. My grandmother, my father's mother, gripped my arm. "Sage, dear, is this yours?" "Every acre, Grandma." Her eyes filled with tears. "And he said you were struggling. Said you could barely afford." She stopped herself. "I should have known better. You were always too smart to be what he said you were." By 4 o'clock, 43 family members were enjoying cocktails, children were playing in the game room, and laughter echoed off the timber walls. I'd hired a photographer who moved through the crowd, capturing genuine joy I hadn't seen at family gatherings in years. That's when my phone exploded. "Dad, where is everyone? The table's set and no one's shown up." I ignored it. "Mom, Sage, have you heard from the family? They were supposed to be here at 3. Ignored. "Meredith, this is so embarrassing. The Worthingtons are here, and it's just us. What did you do?" That one made me smile. Then Uncle Pete posted on Facebook, "Most incredible Thanksgiving ever at my niece's mountain paradise." Who knew our Sage was hiding this place? He tagged the location. Mountain Star Ranch had its own Wikipedia page. It was famous for being one of the largest private estates in Colorado, previously owned by a railroad baron. The photos showed the great room in all its glory, family members toasting with crystal glasses, the feast being prepared by uniformed staff. My phone rang immediately. "Dad, what the hell is going on?" No greeting, just rage. "I'm hosting Thanksgiving, like you told everyone. The rental place in the mountains, remember? That's Mountain Star Ranch. That place costs $50,000 to rent for a weekend. Actually, it costs nothing when you own it." Silence. Then, "You don't own." "I do. Have for 3 years. Funny how you never asked what I did after tech support, Dad. Just assumed I was still failing." "You're lying. Google my name and True Connect dating app. I'll wait." I could hear him typing, then a sharp intake of breath. More typing. More silence. 200 million? His voice was strangled. "Before taxes. But yes." "Why didn't you tell us?" "Same reason you didn't invite me today. Some families just don't fit together. Although I'm curious, how's Meredith explaining to the Worthingtons why 43 people chose my rental over their sophisticated gathering? Sage, sweetheart, don't. Just don't. Enjoy your immediate family dinner. Your actual family is here, eating turkey that costs more per pound than you think I make in a week." I hung up and turned off my phone. Dinner was magical. We sat at tables arranged in a U shape so everyone could see each other. I placed myself in the middle, not at the head. This wasn't about power, it was about connection. Grandma gave the blessing, her voice strong, as she thanked God for truths revealed and families united. The food was extraordinary, but the conversation was better. Without my father's dismissive presence, people actually talked to me. I learned Uncle Pete had always wondered why I was treated differently. Aunt Sharon admitted she'd suspected I was successful when I never asked for money like Meredith did. Cousin Beth revealed that everyone had noticed the favoritism but felt powerless to address it. "You were the scapegoat," Grandma said quietly, reaching for my hand. "Every family seems to need one. I should have protected you. You couldn't have known." I knew enough. Knew you graduated summa cum laude while he told everyone you barely passed. Knew you worked 3 jobs while he said you were lazy. I was a coward, Sage. We all were. You're here now, I said. That's what matters. As dessert was served, 7 different pies plus a dessert bar that looked like it belonged at a wedding. Cousin Michael pulled out his guitar. Soon we were singing, laughing, sharing stories I'd never heard because I'd always been seated too far away to participate. That's when Meredith walked in. The room went silent. She stood in the doorway, her designer dress looking suddenly cheap against the authentic luxury of the lodge. Her husband wasn't with her. The Worthingtons left. She said to no one in particular. Said it was awkward with just the 5 of us. Said they thought it would be a proper family gathering. This is a proper family gathering, Grandma said coolly. You chose a different one. Meredith's eyes swept the room, taking in the opulence, the warmth, the belonging she'd excluded herself from. They landed on me. You did this on purpose. I hosted Thanksgiving for the family that wanted me here. You made your choice. Dad's in the car. Mom too. They want to talk. They know where the door is. But Meredith? They should know I have a strict policy at my ranch. No toxicity allowed. They've had 35 years to talk. I'm done listening. She left. Came back 10 minutes later alone. They won't come in. Pride. Then they can leave. Plenty of restaurants serve turkey. She stood there, designer shoes on my reclaimed wood floors, everything she'd been taught to value crumbling around her. I didn't know, she whispered, about any of this. The money, the ranch. Why didn't you tell me? When? During the family dinners where I was seated by the kitchen. During the holidays where Dad introduced me as the other one. During your engagement party where you specifically asked me not to come because your new in-laws might get the wrong idea about the family. I was just following his lead. I know. You were the golden child, Meredith. It's not your fault he made you that way. But it is your fault you never questioned it. She sank into an empty chair. Around us, the family had resumed conversations, but I could feel them listening. What happens now? She asked. Now you decide who you are when Daddy's not pulling your strings. You can stay for dessert or go back to your empty, sophisticated dinner. But if you stay, you're just Meredith. Not the favorite, not the special one. Just another cousin at the table. She stayed. She stayed through dessert, through coffee, through the evening games where she learned our cousins were actually interesting people. She stayed as the photographer captured the family I'd always wanted to be part of, warm, connected, real. At 10, my phone had 47 missed calls between my parents. I stepped onto the deck, the mountain air sharp and clean, and listened to the first voicemail. Sage, this is your father. Your behavior today was unacceptable. Lying about your circumstances, deliberately sabotaging a family gathering. Delete. The next was from Mom, tearful. Sweetheart, Daddy's upset, but I think it's wonderful about your success. Maybe we could visit. Delete. I didn't need their validation anymore. Inside, my grandmother was teaching the kids poker with cashews as chips. Uncle Pete was showing James his photo album from Vietnam. Aunt Sharon and Beth were planning a summer reunion, at my ranch, of course. And Meredith? She was in the kitchen, helping wash dishes, designer dress protected by an apron, laughing at something the chef said. Maybe there was hope for her yet. Miss Sage. James appeared with a glass of wine. Your father is at the gate. Security's asking if they should admit him. I looked back through the windows at my family, my real family, the ones who'd chosen to be here even when they thought it was just a rental, who'd driven hours to spend time with the forgotten daughter, who were finally seeing me not as the scapegoat but as myself. Tell security the ranch is at capacity. We've already had our Thanksgiving. And if he insists, remind him that I'm not immediate family. His words, not mine. As I rejoined the party, Grandma caught my eye and raised her glass. Others followed suit until everyone was standing, glasses high. To Sage, she said simply, for showing us that the best family gatherings aren't about blood or favorites or immediate anything. They're about showing up for the people who show up for you. To Sage, 40 voices chorused. I raised my own glass, throat tight with emotions I'd never been allowed to show at family gatherings. To all of us, for choosing each other. Later, as the last guests prepared to leave, each one stopped to hug me, to whisper thanks, to promise this wouldn't be the last gathering. Uncle Pete pressed a worn silver dollar into my hand, his lucky charm from the war. For the girl, who was always worth more than they said, he told me. Should have given this 2 years ago. Grandma was last to leave, driven by my staff because it was too late and too far for her to manage alone. I'm proud of you, she said, gripping my hands. Not for the money or the ranch. For knowing your worth when we failed to show it to you. Will you come for Christmas? I asked. Try to keep me away. As the last taillights disappeared down the mountain road, I stood in my empty lodge, but it didn't feel empty. It felt full of promise, of future gatherings where I'd have a seat at the table, my table, where everyone was immediate family if they chose to be. My phone buzzed. One last text from Dad. This isn't over. I texted back. You're right. It's just beginning. Happy Thanksgiving from the daughter you didn't want at your table. Turns out, I built a better one. Then I blocked his number, poured myself the good whiskey, and sat by the fire, planning Christmas. Maybe New Year's too. Hell, why not make it a tradition? The excluded daughter's holidays, where the only requirement for invitation was seeing people for who they really were, not who you needed them to be. 43 people had chosen me over him tonight. Had chosen warmth over sophistication, connection over convention, the forgotten daughter over the golden father. For the first time in 35 years, I'd had a Thanksgiving where I belonged. Not at the kids' table, not by the kitchen, not as an afterthought or an embarrassment. Right in the center, where apparently, I'd always deserved to be. My name is Sage, and I was excluded from Thanksgiving for not being immediate family. So I gathered all the family that mattered and showed them what they'd been missing all along, not just the ranch or the money, but me. Turns out the best revenge isn't a dish served cold. It's a feast served to everyone except the ones who thought you weren't worth a plate at their table.
Hi, I'm Alice, and I'm 28 years old. I work with kids. Recently, my boyfriend Tom proposed to me, and now I'm visiting his parents for the first time. Tom went to a really good university and has a cool job. He's smart, and everyone at work likes him. I've always thought highly of him. His dad seemed happy about us getting married and even said they never had a daughter and that Tom's mom would be happy too. But when I looked at his mom, she seemed upset. She had a frown on her face, like she was mad about something. Then, out of nowhere, she asked me if it's true that I didn't finish high school. She seemed to think that because Tom is so successful, I shouldn't be good enough for him. I felt really surprised and hurt by what she said. I told her it was rude to talk to me like that, and Tom also defended me, saying that my education doesn't matter. Both Tom and his dad stood up for me against his mom. But my mother-in-law didn't seem to calm down. She kept saying that it's natural for a mom to worry about who her son is marrying, especially about their education and job. She even talked about how children inherit their mom's genes, so she wanted to make sure her future grandkids would be great too. It felt like she was really stuck on the idea that I wasn't good enough because I didn't finish high school. It's true that some people care a lot about education and parents want the best for their kids, but it made me sad to think I was being judged just because I didn't graduate. There's actually a reason for that. My dad died in a car accident when I was young, so my mom had a tough time raising me and my twin sister Emma. To help out, I started working after middle school. Now, I'm going to night school to finish my high school diploma. I'm working hard and saving money, and I might even go to college someday. Tom supports me in this, and he's even offered to help pay for my college. Tom understands where I come from, and he's really caring. That's one of the reasons I love him and want to marry him. But it seems like my mother-in-law doesn't like this idea. Tom is an only child, so we might end up living with his parents in the future. I'm a little worried about how things will go if my mother-in-law already seems so against me. A while after, I moved in with my future in-laws, just a month away from our wedding. As the big day got closer, I had to make more trips to the wedding place to double-check everything. I also had to book hotels for our out-of-town guests. With work, school, and wedding stuff, I was super busy. But my mother-in-law didn't seem happy with how I was handling everything. Today, I was getting ready to go to the venue and putting on makeup when she suddenly said, "Oh my, what are you wearing?" She saw my outfit and blurted it out. "I'm getting ready to go to the venue. So I thought I'd dress up," I explained. I wasn't sure if she didn't like me dressing up for the venue or if she just wanted to criticize me. "Huh. You say you're going to the venue, but you're just dressing like that to attract men, aren't you? You're so careless," she accused. She just assumed I was meeting another man instead of going to the venue. I didn't know what to say. I told her I was meeting Tom at the venue and suggested she ask him if she had doubts. But she didn't listen and just kept thinking I was up to something. Then, out of nowhere, my mother-in-law messed up my carefully styled hair. "Hey, what are you doing, mother-in-law? I spent so much time getting ready. This is terrible," I exclaimed. My hair was a mess and I couldn't go out like that. But instead of apologizing, my mother-in-law said, "There's no need to fix it. This hairstyle suits a high school dropout like you. You should wear your hair like this for the wedding." I was already late, so I quickly fixed my hair and rushed to the venue where Tom was waiting. When I got there, Tom saw my upset face and asked what happened. I was torn about whether to tell Tom what happened earlier, but I didn't want to bring up something so upsetting when we were supposed to be talking about the wedding plans. So, I decided not to tell him at that moment. Then, as the wedding day got closer, my mother-in-law came up with a surprising idea. She said, "Hey, Alice's mom lives far away, right? It must be hard for her to come and stay in a hotel. Why doesn't she stay with us?" Tom and I were both surprised by her suggestion. It would save money on hotels and it could help our families bond better. Tom suggested I talk to my mom about it, so I did right away. My mom was really happy with the idea, and we decided that my twin sister Emma would come too. At first, I thought my mother-in-law was being nice, but I had no idea what she would do next. The day before the wedding, my mom and sister came to stay at my in-laws' house. Seeing them after such a long time made me really happy. My sister Emma and I are super close, so we decided to share a room for the night. Emma fell asleep quickly after having a few drinks. She's out like a light, I thought, knowing she wouldn't wake up easily. Just as I was about to go to sleep too, I heard the door to our room open. I was puzzled and then heard a buzzing noise, like someone was shading something. "Now you won't be able to go to the ceremony tomorrow, will you? No need for hair for a girl who didn't finish middle school," I heard my mother-in-law say. I was shocked and turned on the lights. "Mother-in-law, what are you doing?" I exclaimed. The person in the bed suddenly sat up, surprising my mother-in-law too. "Huh, mother-in-law, you're Alice, right?" she said, confused. She had mistaken me for Emma. "That's not my hair. We're twins, and our faces really look alike," I explained. It turned out that it wasn't me whose hair got shaved, it was my sister Emma. "What? How could this happen? It was supposed to be Alice," my mother-in-law exclaimed, clearly shocked. But Emma was still fast asleep, probably due to the drinks she had. When she wakes up and realizes her hair is gone, she'll be really mad. Emma's not one to hold back her feelings, so I knew she'd be furious. "I can't cover for you on this, mother-in-law," I told her, feeling guilty. She probably left the room feeling uneasy. The next morning, Emma saw herself in the mirror and freaked out. She was furious about being bald. Our mom was there too and couldn't help but cry in shock. Tom was disturbed too, saying, "This is terrible. Who would do such a thing?" So, I decided to tell everyone what happened the day before. I was curious to see how my mother-in-law would react this morning, but she wasn't around. My father-in-law said she went for an early walk and hadn't come back yet. I started worrying that she might have run away, so I told her relatives everything and went to look for her. About 30 minutes later, a relative called me to say they found her at a nearby convenience store, so my father-in-law went there. My mother-in-law came back home with a bunch of excuses, unaware that she was being searched for. When she got home, she immediately said, "I didn't do anything wrong. It's all Alice's fault." Alice used the clippers on her own and shaved Emma's hair while she was sleeping next to her. I told everyone, shocked that she was trying to blame me. "Don't be absurd. I didn't do anything. Weren't you the one who entered the room yesterday? It's ridiculous that you're still lying about it, I snapped, feeling frustrated by her denial. But my mother-in-law kept denying her involvement. Then my father-in-law seemed to recall something. He went outside and returned with something in his hand. Alice, is this the clipper? He asked, holding it out to me. When I looked at the clipper, I instantly recognized it as the one my mother-in-law used last night to shave off Emma's hair. That's it. That's the clipper. But where did you find it? I asked, feeling confused. It seems this clipper originally belonged to your father-in-law. He's always been particular about his appearance and carried grooming tools with him. When we checked his car, the compartment where he kept his grooming stuff was messed up. And the clipper was gone, my husband explained. I always keep my car keys in the bedroom. If there's brown hair in this clipper, then it's clear that your mom is the one responsible, my father-in-law added, beginning to take apart the clipper. Inside the clipper was unmistakably brown hair, which we knew belonged to Emma. She probably couldn't clean it properly because she had to rush out in the dark, my father-in-law concluded, displaying the hair to everyone. My mother-in-law sank to her knees. Alice, it's all because of you. You tricked Tom, despite being uneducated and poor. I wanted you to leave Tom no matter what, she confessed. I felt sickened by my mother-in-law's selfish words, but the one who reacted the strongest was Emma, who had her hair shaved off. I don't care what's happening to you, Emma said strongly. What can we do now? I can't go to the wedding looking like this, she said, sounding upset. Emma's father-in-law heard her worry and called a friend who knew how to fix hair. They decided to bring a wig quickly. It would help Emma's hair look better for now. But they needed to find a solution for her mother-in-law too. 30 minutes later, the friend of Emma's father-in-law came with the wig, and Emma looked beautiful with her new hair. At first, they thought about cutting the mother-in-law's hair like they did with Emma, but they didn't feel right about it. Instead, they decided to reveal the mother-in-law's bad actions to everyone. At the wedding, there were some landlords who had been helping the mother-in-law's family for a long time. They were close to Emma's father-in-law, and hearing about what happened would surely affect the mother-in-law's parents. The landlords had been giving them a discount on their rent, but they might stop helping them once they found out about the mother-in-law's behavior. They might even make things worse by increasing the rent or making them leave the apartment. The mother-in-law's parents were poor and depended on this help. If they were forced to leave their apartment, they would have to stay with the mother-in-law. But from what Tom had said before, it seemed like the mother-in-law didn't get along with her parents and wouldn't want to take care of them. Living with her parents would be very difficult for the mother-in-law. Please wait, I'll be in big trouble if you do that. I'm really sorry, it was my fault. I got carried away and did something wrong. I'm sorry, Emma. I'll compensate you for the damage, so please forgive me. The mother-in-law kept apologizing over and over again, bowing down on the floor. But even with all the apologies, Emma's hair couldn't be fixed. After talking it over, they decided that Emma's father-in-law and Tom would tell everyone about what the mother-in-law did. Emma had already agreed to this. The mother-in-law said she didn't want to go to the wedding and tried to escape, but Emma and Tom stopped her. When they got to the wedding place, relatives who had heard of the situation through messages looked very worried as they approached us. We showed everyone what the mother-in-law did wrong, and Emma bravely took off her wig, revealing her bald head. Everyone was shocked, especially the women, who couldn't believe it. For a woman, her hair is very important, so imagine the shock of suddenly having it shaved off. Seeing Emma like this made some people cry. Then, as expected, the landlord came to the mother-in-law and asked if it was true. At first, she tried to lie, but Emma's father-in-law encouraged her to tell the truth, and she finally admitted it. The landlord was furious and also scolded the mother-in-law. After that, the mother-in-law looked sad during the rest of the ceremony, which was unusual for her. The wedding went well, and we were happy to have the blessings of many people. But we couldn't stay in the same house with the mother-in-law anymore. So we decided to move to our own apartment and start a new life as a couple. The mother-in-law panicked when she realized we were leaving the house. She cried and begged us not to go, but we couldn't stay with her anymore. Even the father-in-law felt the same way. He told her he wanted a divorce and asked her to leave the house. The mother-in-law looked scared and held onto the father-in-law, pleading with him to reconsider. She said she had nowhere else to go because she didn't get along with her own parents. She was trembling and looked like she might collapse at any moment. But I didn't feel sorry for her, considering what she did to Emma. I never expected someone to shave my head while I was sleeping, mistaking me for Emma. The mother-in-law kept trying to convince us to let her stay, but the father-in-law contacted her parents, and eventually she had to leave the house. Now, she's living with her parents, even though they have a difficult personality, and she's struggling to take care of them all by herself. The mother-in-law kept calling us, wanting to start over, but we didn't want to live with her again, so we blocked her calls. Now, we're living happily with the father-in-law in his old house. We decided to renovate it together. The father-in-law built his dream study, Tom set up a display area for his model figures, and I installed a modern kitchen. We also made a room for the child we plan to have in the future. Now, the three of us are living comfortably. Emma's hair, which was shaved off before, has grown back short and looks great. Her friends love her new look. She jokes about what happened, which sometimes makes me feel conflicted. Emma visits us for sleepovers sometimes, and I always look forward to that. Even though there might be challenges ahead, I believe we can overcome them together.
Hi, I'm Mia. I'm 29 years old, and I recently went through a divorce from my husband Fred a few months ago. Fred and I first met in college, where we shared a few classes and often sat together. We hit it off and soon found ourselves falling in love. However, there was a challenge in our relationship. Fred's mother, Holly, she seemed to dislike me for some unknown reason and made efforts to come between Fred and me. I used to talk to Fred about how uncomfortable his mother's behavior made me, but he never took any action. He found it hard to stand up to her because she was all he had while growing up. So I decided to let it slide and endure her constant criticism. She loved finding fault in everything I did, even things she didn't know about. I suspected Fred was sharing details with her, which only fueled our arguments. After a lot of fighting, Fred agreed to stop sharing personal information about me with his mother. We dated for around 3 years before tying the knot. Despite Holly's attempts to sway Fred, our bond remained strong. We distanced ourselves from her for a while. During that period, both of us scored promotions at work. Although I earned slightly more, we divided our expenses 60/40, with me covering the larger share. While our relationship flourished, I felt the need to pursue a hobby for personal fulfillment. Design had always intrigued me, so I decided to explore graphic design, something I could do from home. Without Fred's knowledge, I invested in courses and equipment, keeping my project a secret. I preferred keeping my ventures private, as not all of them panned out. The only person I confided in was my best friend Jess. I've picked up a new interest. Another one of your hobbies you'll ditch soon. I hope not. I aim to make good money from it. Really? Finally getting paid for a hobby? Yes, actually, I'm delving into graphic design. Great choice. It's a lucrative field. I've taken some courses and want to start freelancing. I might start a business. Starting solo might not be my style. I was thinking of joining a firm. Nah, that's too routine for you. I have friends starting businesses. You could design their logos and websites. That sounds fantastic. The people Jess introduced me to were wealthy risk takers willing to invest in a beginner like me. Despite my lack of experience, they appreciated my work and connected me with more clients. Gradually, my side hustle became a significant source of income, easing our financial strain. I started saving to surprise Fred with something special, but whenever I wanted to discuss it, he seemed distant. His behavior raised concerns, but he avoided discussing it. The first sign of trouble was when he confessed to spending all his earnings on investments soon after payday. We argued, but we managed to navigate through that month. I worked extra hours to make ends meet, hoping things would improve. But the following month, Fred repeated the same mistake, leaving me furious. How could he squander his money so recklessly? I lashed out in frustration, later regretting my harsh words. I hoped it would prompt him to be more responsible. Yet when it happened again the next month, I felt drained. Despite my efforts, Fred's financial habits persisted. My graphic design gig became our main source of income. But when Fred couldn't contribute for the third month in a row, I reached my breaking point. How could you let this happen again? Haven't you learned anything? I'm just trying to maximize returns, but I messed up. Messed up. Losing your entire paycheck isn't a small mistake. You've got your money though, right? We'll handle things as usual. No, I'm done. I won't cover for you this month. Figure out your own expenses. What? You can't do that. And you can't gamble away everything you earn. But here we are. So what? I'm supposed to go hungry and take public transport. We'll have food at home. but you'll have to use public transport since you can't pay for gas. So you want me to look poor? Taking public transport doesn't define your status. Stop acting entitled. If you wanted to drive, maybe you should have thought about your gambling habits. You're selfish and heartless. How could you do this to your husband? What about what you're doing to me? I've been working extra hours to cover for your losses. Can't you see things from my perspective? You have no perspective worth considering. I'm out. I can't deal with you right now. After Fred stormed off, I couldn't understand his behavior. It was then I started suspecting Holly's involvement. While Fred was away, I decided to investigate. Since he had logged into his bank account on my laptop and saved the password, it wasn't hard to access it. To my surprise, he had plenty of money in his account, and his transactions seemed normal. I was puzzled. Why was he hiding money from me? Why the lies? Feeling confused, I checked his messages for answers. The first person I noticed he had texted was his mom, discussing our recent argument. He told her I'd lashed out because he wouldn't give me money, and Holly responded with an "I told you so." It confirmed my suspicions that she was influencing him. She'd always harbored animosity toward me, but I didn't realize the extent of it until now. As I scrolled through their messages, I discovered more. Holly had bombarded Fred with texts about me, highlighting my supposed flaws like being money-driven and only with him for his wealth. Ironically, I was the main breadwinner in our household. It was clear she was getting to Fred. He started texting her about trivial things that annoyed him about me, and she only fueled his complaints. It explained why Fred was growing distant. Eventually, they plotted to cut me off financially. Initially, Fred resisted, but Holly's encouragement wore him down. 2 months ago, he went through with it. He informed Holly about my extra work hours 1 month and our subsequent argument the next, which only worsened things. I was devastated by what I discovered. Unsure of what to do, I sought solace at my best friend Jess's house. She's always been my go-to person in tough times, no matter the hour. Showing up unannounced at 11:30 p.m. understandably alarmed her. After letting me in and settling me with a glass of wine, she asked what had happened. So spill the beans. What's got you so worked up? I've just uncovered some unsettling things, and I'm at a loss for what to do. Oh, is this about Holly and Fred? Yeah. You remember how Fred's been throwing away his money on those sketchy investments for the past couple of months? Yeah, it was bizarre. Did he do it again? Yes and no. What do you mean? He's had his money all along but refused to give me any. What? That makes no sense. You've been shouldering most of the household expenses, right? Exactly. That's what's so baffling about his behavior. Is Holly pulling the strings in this? Of course. She's been texting him about my flaws for a while and even persuaded him to stop supporting me. And she's clueless about your income too. But what about Fred? Shouldn't he realize how much you contribute? Apparently not. I'm not sure how to handle this. It's pretty obvious though, right? Cut off this support, then divorce him when he's down. Isn't that a bit harsh, Mia? He didn't think about that. Why are you worried? You know what? You're exhausted. Sleep on it, and we'll talk more tomorrow. Jess was spot on. I was utterly drained, both mentally and physically. The events of the day had taken their toll, and all I craved was sleep. Luckily, it was the weekend the next day. Jess and I put on one of our favorite movies, and soon we drifted off. The following morning, we decided to escape from our troubles and indulge in a day of relaxation. We stayed in bed, binge-watching movies and shows, cooking delicious meals, and cherishing each other's company. Despite my efforts to push away thoughts of the previous day, they lingered. I knew I needed this time to process everything. However, that evening my phone rang. Seeing Holly's name on the caller ID made my heart race. Unsure whether to answer, Jess encouraged me to take the call. With trembling hands, I answered. Hello, Holly. You're despicable. Whoa, hold on. What's this about? You're just after my son's money, aren't you? Excuse me? Is that why you cut off his expenses? No, he's been squandering his money on those foolish investments. I can't keep supporting his reckless behavior. Well, that was all a test. A test. I wanted to show Fred that you're only with him for his wealth, and you proved my point. Don't you think you've crossed a line meddling in our marriage? Who are you to judge me when you're the one chasing wealth? Fine. I don't want my son's marriage to fail. What do you suggest we do to fix things? I want you and Fred to split everything 50-50ths. Everything. Are you serious? Yes. Let's see how long you can handle it. I'll draft a contract for both of you. Once signed, you must stick to it. Fine. If Fred agrees, we'll do it. I want a copy of that contract. Agreed. We'll discuss further on Tuesday. I couldn't believe this was the state of my marriage, and anger surged within me. How dare Holly accuse me of being a gold digger, and how could Fred tolerate it? I'd supported him through everything, even his mistakes and lies. When I shared the call with Jess, she smiled, helping me see the silver lining. Splitting everything evenly meant Fred would have to shoulder his share of our major expenses. He had no idea about my side hustle, which I kept secret until it gained momentum. I wanted to surprise him with its success and buy him something extravagant. Knowing I had a solid backup plan brought me relief in that moment. Tuesday arrived sooner than expected. Jess joined me after we finished work, eager to witness the unfolding events. Upon our return home, we found Holly and Fred already there. Fred was preoccupied with his phone, while Holly sat with the lawyer, tweaking what seemed to be the contract on his laptop. Holly barely acknowledged me, but Fred looked visibly nervous. He tried to signal for us to talk privately in the kitchen, but I brushed him off. Instead, I approached Holly and requested to review the contract. The lawyer obliged, and as I suspected, it outlined an equal split of everything, with the added clause of no financial assistance between us. I agreed and signed the document. It didn't take long before Fred began facing challenges. At first, Fred and I kept our distance, both unwilling to engage with someone who seemed intent on my suffering. But when you share a living space, avoiding conversation is nearly impossible. Fred made efforts to bridge the gap between us, but I initially brushed him off. Eventually, his persistence wore me down, and I reluctantly started talking to him. Can we please talk? This silent treatment is getting us nowhere. What exactly do you want me to say, Fred? I don't know, but I miss us. Do you? Then why agree to a contract dividing our finances? I wanted to see if you were truly invested in our relationship. Your mother has caused so many issues between us, yet you still believe her. Is this really the best solution? Don't speak ill of my mother. And what money do you think I need from you? Look, I don't want confrontation. I'm trying to mend things. There won't be any progress until that contract is gone. It's only been 2 weeks since we signed it. I have yet to see any proof that you're not just in it for the money. You're impossible, you know that? Listen, if you're struggling financially, tell me. I'll help. But wouldn't that violate the contract? Besides, I don't want to be accused of breaking it. Why are you making this so hard? You're the one who created this mess. Can't we just be civil? Fine. I could see Fred wrestling with conflicting influences, the beliefs instilled by Holly versus his original values. The Fred I married would never have made such foolish decisions that could harm me. Yet, here he was, obedient to every word from his mother, a decision he'd come to regret. Thankfully, I'd already paid off our major loans that month, leaving Fred in a bind the following month. With my shares settled, I enjoyed financial freedom. I indulged in splurges, treating myself and Jess to lavish dinners, fine wines, museum visits, and cozy cafes, documenting our adventures on social media. Despite inviting Fred to join us multiple times, he always declined due to his financial struggles. Meanwhile, my graphic design side hustle flourished, allowing me to reduce my hours at my day job and even contemplate quitting altogether. Fred's difficulties were evident, even in our groceries. His side of the pantry and fridge often remained empty. While part of me felt sympathy, I couldn't forget that he brought this upon himself. Later, Holly showed up at our doorstep. Jess and I had just returned, so her presence caught me off guard. Hey Holly, what brings you here? Don't act innocent. I know what you've been up to, and I'm calling the cops. Pardon me? What are you talking about? You've been robbing Fred, haven't you? Why on earth would I do that? Because you're seeking revenge. You're not happy about that contract he made you sign. My poor son has been struggling all month while you're out living it up on his dime. Firstly, your son doesn't have any money for me to steal. Yes, I despise the contract, but let's not forget who's truly responsible for it. You're the one who pressured us into signing it, and now your son is suffering because of it, you liar. I'll be dialing the police right now. Go ahead. I haven't taken a penny from your son. How do you have so much money then? Your job doesn't pay that much more than Fred's, and he mentioned you've cut back on hours. I have another business on the side, a graphic design venture. I intended to surprise Fred with it until you filled his head with nonsense. You started a business without telling me. I plan to buy you a car with the money I earned. How much do you make from it? More than you think. You lied. I didn't do anything wrong. I was trying to do something nice, and you ruined it. Since you care so much about your son, maybe you should support him. I handed divorce papers to Fred, which I filed right after signing the contract and kept until now. Fred looked shocked, but I was indifferent. While Holly would normally rejoice at the sight of the papers, she seemed furious instead. I informed them I'd be moving out in 3 weeks and would continue to split the remaining loan payments, but that was all. Fred pleaded with me, but I reminded him it was his doing. It's been a few months since everything unfolded, and I can happily say I'm free from that toxic relationship. Holly tried to contest the divorce, but with our assets separated by the contract, there was little for Fred to gain. In fact, he ended up losing more money, struggling to keep up with the mortgage payments. We sold the house, and he moved back in with his mother. Meanwhile, my life has taken a positive turn. My business is thriving, and I've had the opportunity to collaborate with major brands. It's been a blissful and fulfilling time for me. I'm grateful I had something to rely on, or I might have ended up in Fred's situation. I hope he learns from this experience, but ultimately, it's not my concern.
When my daughter got home from a Christmas party at her grandparents' house, she was in tears. She looked upset as she quietly gave me a wrapped gift. "Look at this, Mom," she asked. "Why do I have to go through this?" I didn't know what to say. As soon as I opened the package, I knew it wasn't right. As a child, I instantly called the police to report what happened, which led to the gift giver's actions being made public and causing chaos. This event caused a lot of trouble in the family, and the person who did it had to deal with harsh results. I started a new job at age 34 after a rude comment from a previous boss. I am now 45 years old, and my younger husband works for the same company. At my current job, skills are more important than age or gender, and my husband, who was my boss at the time, was very supportive. We got married right away and now have a sweet 4th-grade daughter who loves to read and is kind to everyone. However, I don't get along well with my husband's sister. Even though I get along well with my in-laws, she doesn't like that I'm older than my husband and makes fun of how quickly we got married. It hurt to hear her say mean things about my age and the changes in my body from being pregnant, but I tried to keep my cool for my own peace of mind. Her attitude only changed after she had a quick wedding and moved away, which cut down on our time together and stopped her from making fun of me. This change lets me focus on getting ready to meet our daughter. Even though giving birth was hard, the birth of our daughter was a happy event in our lives that cleared the sadness that had been affecting our happiness. During the birth of our daughter, it was very important for me to have my husband's steadfast support and positive words. When she cried for the first time in the delivery room, his thanks and appreciation for my work made us both cry tears of joy. But 5 months after our daughter was born, my sister-in-law had a boy and started coming to our house again. Each visit took an hour. Her goal seemed to be to make negative comparisons between our kids and to say mean things about my age, which made my daughter feel bad. She said it was clear from the lines she said were on my daughter's face compared to her child's smooth skin. Her brazenness astounded me as I was adjusting to being a parent for the first time. She wouldn't bring any baby necessities with her, but she would leave with diapers and formula, saying she didn't want to run out. This action really confused me. It seemed like the main reason she came was to put me down and then take goods, like it was her right. Because of her husband's job, they had to move to a different state, so she stopped visiting. This brought some peace for a short time, until our daughter started grade school and found out that her cousin was also there. Even though our family relationships were tense, our daughter and her cousin became close friends. She took care of him because she was older, nicer, and more honest. He became well-liked by his friends. They were in the same class by the 3rd grade, and my daughter got praise for a reading review she did over the summer. It was even printed in the local newspaper. Family and friends were talking about this accomplishment, especially when I visited my in-laws. A lot of family members got together this time, maybe because my daughter got an award. but my sister-in-law seemed uneasy about the attention our family was getting. A woman claimed that it was unfair and said the famous book was meant for her son, even though the kids had already read both books and agreed to trade them. The fact that they chose which book report to write together was a team effort that my nephew liked. This event showed how the kids could share and help each other, which was very different from the adults' arguments and confusion. My nephew really liked the book my daughter read first, so she was kind and let him pick it out. When I told my sister-in-law this story, she wrongly thought I wrote the award-winning reflection for my daughter. She may have remembered that I liked writing books in college, which she probably got from my husband and didn't tell me. She was also spreading lies at school about me, saying that I had used my personal ties with the competition judges to give my daughter's entry an unfair edge. The spread of these false charges made my daughter so sad that she stopped enjoying reading, which she used to really enjoy. For me, this was the last blow. I couldn't stand to see her so down, both because of the lies being spread about me and because she was the target of mean-spirited rumors. I told my husband about his sister's mean behavior toward me for the first time since we got married before I did anything else. This included taking clothes meant for our daughter, saying mean things about my looks while I was pregnant, and comparing me to a sumo wrestler because she thought babies couldn't tell the difference between gender-specific clothes. My husband agreed that it was time to involve his parents because he was so angry about his sister's behavior. He insisted on telling my sister-in-law about the problem in person, so he went to her house with his parents. Her initial happiness at having her family visit out of the blue quickly turned to shock when my husband gave her a harsh warning. When she was called out, she got angry and blamed me for exposing her to her favorite brother. By making herself the victim, she was trying to avoid taking responsibility. At first, I returned her calls because I thought she was trying to make things right. But it turned out she was just venting her anger. In the end, I set her phone number to go straight to voicemail, so when she tried to call, I didn't answer. I thought at first that she had lost interest when the calls stopped after a few weeks. It turned out that wasn't the reason, though. My in-laws hosted their first ever children's Christmas party in December, which made me wonder why they chose that month. No matter what, my daughter was thrilled to be asked. She remembered the fun Christmas party she had in kindergarten and hoped for something similar at her elementary school, but they couldn't hold one because of their policy on religious events. I'd often wonder why people have to strictly follow faith traditions when Christmas has become a holiday that people all over the world love and celebrate in their own unique ways. I've been noticing that some parents are very careful to keep their faith in mind when they talk about their kids. My daughter and I have celebrated Christmas quietly at home for the past 2 years, choosing to enjoy the holiday in our own unique way. She really liked the gift swap, which was one of the best parts of our party. This year, my in-laws offered a straightforward budget of $11 for a gift exchange at their Christmas party. My daughter and I went on a little trip to a nearby huge shopping mall to look for the right gift. She finally chose one of her favorite picture books because she wanted to tell someone else about the story and how much it made her happy. On the day of the party, she left with the gift and went to my in-laws' house, which was only a short bus ride from our house. After telling my mother-in-law that she was coming, she offered to pick her up from the bus stop. Later, she called to let me know that my daughter had arrived safely, which temporarily eased my fears. But the peace didn't last long. After only 50 minutes, the sound of the front door opening on a weekday caught me off guard. My husband was at work, and I was working from home while my daughter was on winter break. The scene I saw when I got there broke my heart. My daughter crying by the door. She gave me a gift-wrapped bag that looked like the things inside would make sense of everything. I found a scary card written in red ink inside the bag, along with a newspaper with her reading reflection torn into pieces. The card warned us not to be too cocky, or we might end up like the mutilated stuffed animal inside the bag, which was cut up and stained with red ink to look like blood. This upsetting act was not at all a harmless joke. When my daughter informed me that my sister-in-law had made this ominous gift, I was shocked. People agreed that adults would not bring gifts to the party because it was supposed to be a happy, kid-focused event. Still, even though I wasn't going with my daughter to the party, I was shocked to find out that my sister-in-law was there and did something horrible to my daughter. If my mother-in-law knew that her daughter was there, she would have told me because she always asked that we tell her about any problems her daughter caused. This misunderstanding upset me and showed that someone was trying to hurt us on purpose, but my mother-in-law didn't know about it. When my daughter got home from school, she was upset. I told her she should tell her grandma what happened. But before she could, my aunt spoke up and said that she hadn't called for her, and that only kids from Christian schools were welcome. When my daughter asked me what a mission school was, I didn't know what to say. A family member was recently accepted into a mission school, which caused a lot of talk in the family. My sister-in-law's son went to a Christian kindergarten. We had heard of family members who didn't know they had ties to these kinds of schools until they started going. We made a different choice. For our daughter, we chose a neighborhood kindergarten and a public grade school. It looked like my sister-in-law used this as another chance to put down my daughter. The frightening gift my daughter got made me very angry, so I hurried to the police station and made it clear how serious the threat was. Even though the police didn't want to get involved at first and said it should be handled as a family problem, luckily a female officer saw how serious the situation was. She understood our fear and promised to visit my sister-in-law that evening with a warning. She knew that threats and violence within families are crimes that need to be reported. I told my angry husband about what happened during the day when he got home. He spoke out against his sister's mean behavior and called his parents, who were holding the Christmas party, but said they didn't know about it. They thought my sister-in-law might have broken in through a back door that wasn't locked while my mother-in-law was busy with other things. The little kids in the family were given the party to plan. After the police officer gave my sister-in-law a harsh warning about what would happen if she didn't change, my in-laws, worried that she might have done something wrong, called a family meeting to talk about it. My sister-in-law and her husband showed up late to the meeting at my in-laws' house. She was clearly upset and not sorry about the police presence, and her husband didn't seem to know what the meeting was for. This situation made the problem seem even worse, which led the family to talk about how to move forward and deal with the root problems. When the husband of my sister-in-law's sister finally found out what his wife had done to our family, he was shocked. Before that, he had no idea how bad things were. When he apologized to us, he seemed truly sorry, which was very different from my sister-in-law, who stayed stubborn and refused to say sorry. Everyone remained silent as she argued that the fact that the police did not arrest her proved her innocence, which was difficult for us to comprehend. Surprisingly, he told her he was going to divorce her. No one saw any outward signs of trouble in their marriage, so this news shocked everyone. He gave a history of putting up with her behavior, which had gone from ignoring housework and child care to making people afraid because she wasn't paying attention. Her concern with how she looked led her to make a lot of moves that weren't necessary. She didn't do these things because it was necessary for her job. Rather, she did them because she was vain and wanted to maintain a certain social status. She often said that their moves were okay because she had high hopes for their son. For example, she tried to get him into fancy kindergartens but failed, which made her feel even worse about herself. In the end, they chose a public school because that's what their son wanted. Even though his wife didn't want to at first, her father supported the choice. The husband's decision to divorce her wasn't a spontaneous one. Rather, it was the result of years of resentment that her most recent abuse had exacerbated. When she heard about the divorce, my sister-in-law was caught off guard. She tried to say sorry, but it was weak and seemed like a last-ditch effort to fix things by saying they were just jokes or pranks. But her actions, especially the mean message she sent to a child, were too serious to be laughed off. This kind of behavior, which could make even adults scared, was unacceptable and showed how trust had been broken in the family forever. I talked to her about it and pointed out how different her actions were from what a caring mom would do. I told her, just because you're a parent doesn't mean you automatically have parental instincts. I meant to show that her behavior was very different from what someone in that job should do. When my husband saw her crying, he told her very clearly that crying wasn't going to help. She shouldn't think that pity will make people forgive her, especially since she is old. She kept crying even though she didn't do anything wrong and wondered why she was being blamed. She even said that the family didn't like me because I was married to her brother, which made it sound like the problem was with me being older than her. The fact that she didn't understand how bad her actions were left us all speechless. My husband was especially shocked that she didn't get it. There was a lot of unsolved stress in the room, so the conversation stopped all of a sudden. Her husband had to take her home. She refused to accept responsibility for her errors, which harmed the divorce process later. It wasn't until her son told her the truth about the Christmas party that things changed, and she reluctantly agreed to the divorce. Her son told his friends about the scary gift exchange he saw, especially the upsetting picture of a stuffed animal that was smashed and stained with red that looked like blood. People at school heard about the statement very quickly, which made both teachers and parents worried. After this news came out, it was hard for my daughter to go back to school. The event and the rumors that connected her to her cousin's story made her feel down. People started to guess what link there was between her absence and what happened at the Christmas party, which showed how one careless action can change the lives of many people. I had thought that everything could have been taken care of quietly so that my daughter could go back to school when she was ready. When her cousin told her about the upsetting event, it wasn't to make her laugh. It was a desperate plea for his mother to stop doing what was hurting him. When her husband saw how these revelations affected people, he felt he had to speed up the divorce process and agreed to her terms just to end their split. By that time, she was really well known in the neighborhood for being scary around kids, which made her friends avoid her and even neighbors dislike her. She felt stuck and shamed, so she saw the split as a way out. She thought that going back to live with her parents would make her feel better, but her ex-husband was adamant about keeping custody of their son, and she didn't fight the decision. Instead, she coldly told her son that she didn't care about him because she was planning to get married again and kids were getting in the way of her plans. Her mean words made her son bravely turn her down. He told her he didn't need her in his life and that he was happier with his dad's care. He also told her not to talk to his cousin. When she went back to her parents' house, she was not allowed to stay, which made things worse for her. She had to deal with the effects of her acts by herself. Her downhill spiral put her in dangerous positions. For basic needs, taking out loans from sketchy sources, and then she disappeared from our lives. My husband and his parents decided not to file a missing persons report because they saw her absence as an answer. After that, my daughter got the courage to go back to school, where her cousin is still there to support her and promised to look out for her. Unexpectedly, this hard time has brought our families closer together, especially with my ex-brother-in-law, as we work together to help the kids. In the absence of my sister-in-law, my in-laws have taken care of and loved both of my grandkids with open arms. Now that she's not around, our family is at peace and has built a strong, trusted bond that was missing before.
Dad wrote this codicil the day before he died. If anyone cuts out his firstborn from family docs, they lose all inheritance. The lawyer's words echoed as Mom's composed face cracked. She'd spent 30 years pretending I didn't exist. But Dad had planned for this since the day she called me the bastard child. The real question: how did he hide a whole secret estate from the woman who controlled everything? My name is Vanessa Cole, and I'm sitting in a mahogany-paneled law office watching my stepfamily learn that karma sometimes comes with legal documentation. The morning started with me reading my father's obituary in the Chicago Tribune. Beloved father of Amanda and Bradley. No mention of his firstborn daughter. Now, 6 hours later, I'm about to inherit everything while the real family who excluded me gets nothing. But let me back up 30 years, because this story of revenge from beyond the grave starts with a 22-year-old secretary and a married executive who promised to leave his wife. My mother Julia was young, brilliant, and naive when she started working at my father Richard's investment firm. He was 40, wealthy, and supposedly in a loveless marriage. The oldest story in corporate America, right? Except my mother genuinely believed him when he said he'd file for divorce. She believed him right up until she told him she was pregnant, and he offered her a check and a termination package instead of a wedding ring. To his credit, and I use that term loosely, Richard didn't completely abandon us. He set up child support through his lawyer, paid for my education, and even visited occasionally until I was 5. That's when his wife Catherine found out about me and delivered her ultimatum. Cut all contact or lose his real family. He chose them, of course. But the child support continued, always through lawyers, always with the stipulation that we never contact him directly or acknowledge the connection publicly. My mother, hurt but practical, agreed. She used his money to put herself through law school while raising me, eventually becoming a successful environmental attorney who specialized in taking down corporations like the one Richard ran. I grew up knowing my father's name, but not his face after age 5. I knew I had half-siblings, Amanda, 2 years younger than me, and Bradley, 4 years younger, who didn't know I existed. I knew their mother had one, and I was the shameful secret locked away in a legal agreement. What I didn't know was that Richard had been watching from afar all along. The first sign came when I was accepted to Northwestern University. My mother had saved enough for state school, but Northwestern was beyond our reach. Then a merit scholarship appeared, covering everything. The scholarship foundation was vague about selection criteria, but the timing was too perfect to be coincidental. Similar coincidences followed throughout my life. The internship at a top consulting firm that just happened to have an opening. The condo in Lincoln Park that became available at below market rent just when I needed to move. The promotion opportunities that aligned perfectly with my career goals. I suspected Richard's invisible hand, but could never prove it. I built my life without him. Or so I thought. I became a financial advisor, earned my CFP certification, and started my own practice. I dated, had my heart broken, adopted a rescue dog named Max, and created a circle of chosen family who actually wanted me around. I thought I'd made peace with being the erased otter. Then 2 weeks ago, I opened the Tribune to see Richard's obituary. 70 years old, sudden heart attack. Survived by his loving wife Catherine and his 2 children, Amanda and Bradley. His 2 children. Not 3. 2. I told myself it didn't matter. He'd been dead to me for 25 years. What difference did it make if he was actually dead now? But seeing it in print, being officially erased from his existence, hit harder than expected. I wasn't even preceded in death by, or also survived by. I simply didn't exist in the official record of his life. My mother called within an hour. "Honey, I saw the obituary. How are you feeling?" Like I've been photoshopped out of existence, I admitted, which I guess I have been for decades. "Do you want to go to the funeral?" "God, no. Can you imagine?" "Hi. I'm the secret daughter you've pretended doesn't exist. Sorry for your loss." We laughed bitterly, and I thought that was the end of it. Richard was gone, taking his secrets and shame to the grave. His real family could mourn in peace without the inconvenient reminder of his infidelity. Then the letter arrived. It came by certified mail 3 days after the funeral, from a law firm I didn't recognize. Inside was a formal notice requiring my presence at the reading of Richard William Cole's last will and testament. I called the number on the letterhead, certain it was a mistake. "I think there's been an error. Richard Cole and I weren't in contact." "No error, Miss Cole," the secretary assured me. "Your presence is specifically required. In fact, the will cannot be read without you." Which is how I found myself walking into the conference room this morning, facing my stepmother and half-siblings for the first time in 25 years. Catherine looked exactly as I'd imagined, polished, cold, with the kind of facelift that whispered rather than shouted. Amanda was a softer version of her mother, while Bradley had Richard's square jaw and weak chin. "Who the hell is she?" Bradley demanded as I took my seat. Catherine's face went pale, then red. Nobody. She's nobody. There's been a mistake. No mistake, said Mr. Brennan, the estate attorney. This is Vanessa Cole, Richard's daughter from his relationship with Julia Stephens. Her presence is required for the reading. His what? Amanda gasped, looking between her mother and me. Mom. Your father's bastard, Catherine spat. Though I don't know why she's here. Richard agreed she would never be part of our lives. Technically, Mr. Brennan interjected, he agreed she wouldn't contact you. He made no promises about his estate planning. Before the family drama could escalate, Mr. Brennan opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. Shall we begin? There are actually 2 documents to review. The will filed with the court 20 years ago, and a codicil added 1 week before Richard's death. He read the original will first. Standard stuff. The bulk of the estate to Catherine, generous trusts for Amanda and Bradley, various charitable bequests. The estate was valued at approximately $15 million, not including the family home and vacation properties. Then he picked up a single sheet of paper. The codicil, witnessed by myself and Dr. Martin Shaw, Richard's physician, adds the following provision. He cleared his throat and read. In the event that my eldest daughter, Vanessa Julia Cole, is excluded from any official family documentation, including but not limited to obituaries, funeral programs, or death notices, the following shall take effect. All previous bequests are null and void. The entirety of my estate, including all properties, investments, and personal effects, shall pass to Vanessa Julia Cole, with the exception of statutory minimums required by law for my spouse. The room exploded. This is insane. Catherine shrieked. He wasn't in his right mind. That little bitch manipulated him. I never spoke to him, I said quietly. Not once in 25 years. The codicil includes a competency evaluation from Dr. Shaw. Mr. Brennan continued calmly. Richard was of sound mind and quite specific in his instructions. He also left this letter for Vanessa. He handed me an envelope. My name was written on it in handwriting I didn't recognize, because I'd never seen my father's writing before. Inside was a single page. My dear Vanessa, if you're reading this, then Catherine has done exactly what I expected. Erased you from my death as she erased you from my life. I let her do it while I lived, to my eternal shame. I won't let her do it in death. I've watched you from afar, every graduation, every achievement, every moment I should have been there for. You became extraordinary not because of me, but in spite of me. Your mother raised a remarkable woman, and I was a coward who didn't deserve to know you. The money isn't an apology. Nothing can apologize for abandoning you. It's justice. Catherine cost you a father. She doesn't get to profit from it. Be happy, my daughter. You always were the best of me. Richard. I read it twice, tears I didn't expect blurring the words. When I looked up, Bradley was on his feet, rage distorting his features. This is bullshit. You can't steal our inheritance. I'm not stealing anything, I said. I didn't ask for this. Mr. Brennan. Catherine's voice was deadly calm now. We'll be contesting this. Richard was obviously coerced. By whom? Mr. Brennan asked mildly. Miss Cole hadn't spoken to him in decades. There's no evidence of contact, no money trail, nothing to suggest undue influence. However, there is this. He pulled out another document. Richard kept a file of every email you sent him, Mrs. Cole, insisting that Vanessa never be acknowledged. Every threat to divorce him if he contacted her. Every demand that she be excluded from family events, announcements, and documents. You created quite the paper trail demonstrating your intentional exclusion of his child. She's not his real child. Amanda protested. She's just what? I asked. The product of an affair. Still his daughter. Still excluded from his obituary at your mother's insistence. Mr. Brennan continued reading. The statutory minimum for Catherine was the house and $500,000. Everything else, the investments, the vacation homes, the business interests, the art collection, came to me. Roughly $14 million in assets, plus properties in Aspen and Martha's Vineyard. There's one more thing, Mr. Brennan said. Richard established a shadow trust 25 years ago, funded annually but never disclosed in family finances. It's been managed separately, growing substantially. That trust, worth approximately $8 million, was always designated for Vanessa, regardless of the will's other provisions. My head spun. This man I hadn't spoken to since kindergarten had been planning for decades to make things right. Not by being a father, but by ensuring his real family couldn't erase me after his death. This won't stand, Catherine hissed. I'll spend every penny fighting this. With what funds? Mr. Brennan asked politely. Your personal assets are limited to the statutory inheritance. The family accounts are frozen pending estate distribution. The truth hit the three of them simultaneously. Catherine had never worked, living off Richard's wealth. Amanda was a freelance photographer funded by Daddy's money. Bradley worked for one of Richard's companies in a position created for him. Without the inheritance, they had nothing but the house and $500,000. Comfortable, but not the lifestyle they'd known. You did this. Catherine turned on me, her composure finally cracking completely. You've been planning this, waiting for him to die. I was planning to get Thai food tonight and watch Netflix with my dog, I said. I didn't even know he remembered I existed. We'll prove you manipulated him, Bradley threatened. We'll hire investigators, find evidence. Bradley, Amanda said quietly, staring at me. Look at her eyes. She has Dad's eyes. The room went silent. I did have Richard's eyes. The same unusual green with gold flecks. Amanda had them too. We looked at each other, two daughters who'd never been allowed to be sisters. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't know about you. Mom always said Dad had been married before, briefly, no children. I didn't know. Shut up, Amanda, Catherine snapped. No. Amanda's voice grew stronger. We excluded our sister from Dad's obituary, his child, my sister, and you made us do it. She is not your sister. She's nothing but a mistake. A mistake who just inherited everything. Bradley said bitterly. Great job, Mom. Your pettiness cost us $14 million. As they turned on each other, Mr. Brennan gestured for me to step outside. In the hallway, he handed me another envelope. Richard left instructions for me to give you this privately, he said. Inside were photographs. Dozens of them, all taken from a distance. My college graduation. My first day at my own firm. My 30th birthday dinner with friends. A life documented by a ghost of a father who couldn't be there but couldn't look away. The last photo was recent. Me at a coffee shop, laughing at something on my phone, Max beside me. On the back, in that same unfamiliar handwriting. You got your mother's smile. I'm glad. I stood in that hallway, holding evidence of a father's distant love and guilty conscience, while his real family imploded in the conference room behind me. The money was surreal, but the photos, knowing he'd been there, watching, caring from afar, that was what broke me. Mr. Brennan gave me a moment before speaking again. There's considerable paperwork to complete, but I should warn you, they will contest this. It could get ugly. Let them, I said, wiping my eyes. I've been erased for 30 years. What's a little more family drama? I went back into the conference room to find Catherine on the phone with her lawyer, Bradley sulking in a corner, and Amanda sitting alone, looking lost. When she saw me, she stood up. I know you don't owe us anything, she said quietly. But I'd like to know my sister. If you're willing. Catherine whirled around. Amanda, don't you dare. What are you going to do, Mom? Disown me too? Oh wait. I don't have an inheritance to lose anymore. I looked at Amanda, really looked at her. She had our father's eyes but our mother's kindness in them. Maybe something could be salvaged from this mess after all. Coffee sometime, I offered. You can meet my dog. But your mother and brother stay away. Deal, she said quickly. As I left the law office, $14 million richer and one sister closer to whole, I thought about Richard's letter. He called me the best of him, but he was wrong. The best of me came from my mother's strength, her refusal to let bitterness poison my life, her insistence that I build my own path. The money would help others now. My mother's environmental law clinic, scholarships for kids like I was, maybe even turning one of those vacation homes into a retreat for single mothers. Richard's wealth could finally do some good instead of maintaining Catherine's Botox and Bradley's entitlement. But first, I was going to buy the fanciest Thai food in Chicago and share it with Max while we watched Netflix. Because even instant millionaires need to keep some things normal. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Amanda. Thank you for giving me a chance. P.S. Mom fainted again when she realized she can't afford her country club dues. Bradley is Googling how to contest a will on his phone. I'm looking at apartments. I smiled, texting back. Thai food tonight. My treat. Literally everything is my treat now. For the first time in my life, being Richard Cole's daughter felt like a blessing instead of a burden. It just took him dying and leaving me everything for us both to finally acknowledge I existed. Karma, delivered by certified mail with a notarized signature.